Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on the channel. I'm Ash, aka Brommer18. Thanks for joining me again in another installment of our FIFA 22 Tactics series. This is a series where I show you how to recreate and adapt real systems so that they will work in game. If you're new to the channel and new to the series, welcome. Thanks for coming along. Please do hit the subscribe button if you enjoy it for more regular content from the likes of FIFA 22, eFootball, PES, etc. What we do in these videos is I will talk to you about any position changes, of which there are a couple in this one. And then we'll follow that with the tactics, and I'll go through the tactics and talk to you about not just what they do, but also why they do it. Because I think it's important to have a bit of context around each thing so that you know sort of why we're doing things and how accurate it is. And also we'll finish off with the player instructions as well. I'll tell you you know, each player's instructions, but we've got this lineup here. I'm also going to tell you little tweaks to make depending on where players play. So if Pogba's out on the left, I'll show you how to change the system there. If you got Fred in the middle, etc. If you got Cavani in, you know, I'll show you those little tweaks as well. Just a quick notice for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. If you haven't done so already, please go and check out my Borussia Dortmund career mode series. It is a realistic rebuild of Borussia Dortmund here on FIFA 22. Really enjoying that one so far. We've got a few episodes through, so go and check that out after you've watched this video. So then, first things first, let's talk about the formation and the position changes. Well, I started with the 4-2-3-1 wide, but as you can see, there have been a couple of alterations. One, Paul Pogba at left central midfield. He was at, obviously, CDM. Move him up to left central midfield. And this is because, with Pogba, you're obviously wanting to play that sort of deep line playmaker role. So with this, he's going to get into the action a little bit more, going to get himself a little bit further up the pitch, whereas as the defensive midfielder, they're very much going to be holding. So you're really looking to get him into the game more. Also, you can replicate his roles better with the instructions, which we'll come on to a bit later. And we've also moved the left and right midfielders up to wingers as well. And this is because then they really play active. They're getting in behind more. They're further up the pitch. When they're right or left midfield, they really replicate the role of a wing back a bit more, to be honest with you. So generally in these systems, unless there's a specific requirement to suggest otherwise, these guys are going to go up to the wing. So Greenwood and Sancho in this case are at left and right wingers. The fullbacks this time staying as main fullbacks. If anyone, well, for anyone who does watch these videos on a regular, you'll know usually when we've got any sort of attacking fullback, we usually change them to wing back. This time, not so much. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, on to the tactics. So what have we got with Ole's system? Well, you've got one that's a bit more pragmatic than perhaps the other teams in that sort of top four realm, the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, etc. You've got one that's more predicated on the counter-attack. There's a lot of protection for the defence, as we've seen with McTominay and Fred often being the favoured two in central midfield. And so we've really decided to recreate that in the tactics. So first off, defensive style is pressure on heavy touch. So they're generally going to bed back in and track back and put their mid-block behind the ball. But then occasionally they will pressurise the opposition, and that's really going to be instigated by you. You've got to press manually with your player. You need to use you know, hold teammate contain. You need to use team press on the D-pad. In certain moments you can then instigate that, but otherwise they're going to bend back in, and that's what's going to complement their counter-attacking style. With the width, it's onto 10. Make sure they're very compact, very narrow. Stop teams playing through them. Force them around. In the gameplay on the right hand side above me that you can see, you'll often see Sterling getting the ball over onto that left wing, but because we'd really crowded out those central areas, it was relatively tough for him to make a lot of it, other than the once where they scored the goal. Worth mentioning as well that we do actually fall behind in this game, which doesn't happen a lot on the tactics videos, and we had to actually come back from behind, and that was where pressure on heavy touch also came in handy as well, because it just means you're less passive. You've still got that sort of active-minded emphasis in certain moments. With the depth, this is actually slap bang in the middle at 50, because very much trying to replicate that mid block that they do. They don't really play over high line. You know, it's tougher to play over high line when you've got the likes of Maguire on FIFA, who's, you know, got a lot of 50 pace and stuff and not a lot of pace around him. Obviously, you've got a little bit more pace with the likes of Varane, Wan-Bissaka as well when he's not overlapping. But generally, this is on the mid block. You can actually move this down depending on the opposition, so it's a bit dynamic. You'll notice in the game, I'm pretty sure I changed this down to 40 at half time. And that was because we were also switching players around as well. So I could show you other roles such as Pogba at left midfield, etc. But generally, yeah, if you're playing a really good team, better opposition, you can lower this down to 40. Still a mid block, but a little bit lower. Or maybe if you're playing against a team who are, you know, very low down in the table on a career mode, maybe not very good, maybe you can move this up to a 60. But slap bang in the middle, a nice mid block at 50 is fine generally. Offensively then, slow build up. Now, we've spoken about how they like to counter attack, but there is a way to it, and that is why in chance creation we have forward runs. So slow build up, because you still see generally Man United always looking to play it through the thirds, looking to play it out from the back. They value possession, they just have different ways of trying to work it through the field. So slow build up, your counter attacking emphasis is going to come from this, the forward runs, lots of players running in behind. You see with the first goal we scored with Ronaldo, who is also on getting behind, by the way, we'll talk about that later. That's how we scored the goal. He running in behind. We've got a one direct ball. It's slow build up beforehand, and then we get to about the halfway line, about the semicircle, the centre circle, sorry. And then Ronaldo is on his bike running in behind, and that's when we play the ball in over the top to him. So you've got that nice variation. You can approach teams in multiple ways. It's very dynamic, as we've also spoken about with the line as well. Onto width, this is up to 80, which means it's going to be very wide. Again, playing into that whole variety, and also the counter attack. You're going to get those wingers, you're going to get the fullbacks, really utilising the space as much as possible in the wide areas. Again, a lot of counter attacking teams generally playing wide because they're really trying to utilise that space with their runs and their movement. Also, the fact that the fullbacks are only that right and left back rather than wing backs, what we usually set them to in the positions. Part of this party plays into it as well. We usually do that to make them get wider onto the touchline. This time though, because you're playing such a wide team, less emphasis on that. So that's important to note as well. With players in the box, this is on 6, which means you're going to have around 3 players in the box. Generally what it's going to be is it's going to be Ronaldo or the centre forward, obviously, and then probably the 2 wingers, someone as like Greenwood, who's acting as that sort of wide second striker, maybe a Sancho or a Fernandes. Not as much Fernandes, but it can be occasionally, but very much free. And then what you find is, if crosses are ever deflected, the opposition team clears it, etc. You've got a lot of players ready to pick up possession because you've got those 3 central midfielders. You've got the fullbacks who might have gone forward as well. So worth bearing that one in mind. Finally, for corners and free kicks, what we always do for these videos is we move this up to 4. Now, obviously, I've been looking to try and personalise it a little bit more this year for the team, but it hasn't really required any change for this. Man United generally will have 2 players back, couple 1 or 2 on the edge of the area, and the rest of them are in the box. Now, I couldn't make much of it on the gameplay above, unfortunately. I was really trying to get Ronaldo into it, but my crossing was just not very good from the corner, so I hold my hands up there. But we do have both of these on to 4. So let's talk about the player instructions then. We're going to start off with the goalkeeper and work our way through the field. So first things first, with the goalkeeper, in this case it is David De Gea, maybe you go for Henderson, your choice. We have him on comes to crosses. That's more trying to play into FIFA and how we adapt it a little bit. We want him to be that aggressor, try and relieve pressure off you a little bit. I've noticed the AI are starting to cross the ball in a little bit more on this game, which is good, which means you will have to deal with those situations more. However, saving outside the box, he's actually unbalanced. You know, he's not really much of a sweeper keeper, and nor does he have to be when you're playing that mid block. He doesn't have to as much. The instruction in this case says unless he's clearly getting to it first, he'll come out. You do see an example of that actually in the gameplay where he picks up the ball, gets a little bit shaky, but he does pick up the ball, so that will work just fine. So it really does replicate his role well. He's not that out and out aggressive sweeper keeper. With the 2 centre backs, you don't need to change any of their roles. These are absolutely fine. The only thing you do need to do, which I actually have forgotten to do, but you do need to do it anyway, is aggressive interceptions on Harry Maguire. What you find with Harry Maguire is he often steps out, tries to really win passes, well, actively, essentially. Now, it does often leave him in a bit of trouble. And we've seen it both for Manchester United and England. but it's very much replicating his role. So make sure to move that to aggressive interceptions. It doesn't drain on stamina as much this year, so worth bearing that one in mind as well. With the two fullbacks, there are slightly different roles. So with Luke Shaw, we've got him on overlap and join the attack. Now I don't need to explain that one too much. We know what Shaw's like, a very attacking fullback, and he's really coming into his own in recent years, particularly under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. However, with Wan-Bissaka, his run type is just on overlap, whereas attacking runs is this time on balanced. So we're not always looking to get him out and out overlapping Greenwood all the time, and that's really playing into his strengths, because you know everyone's made a big deal out of it, how he's very good defensively. Attacking wise, you know, he needs a bit of work, he needs a bit of development, so it's worth bearing that one in mind as well. So we're not always looking to get him overlapping, just sometimes. Next up, on to the defensive midfielder, Scott McTominay in this case. So defensive behaviour is cut passing lanes. Bear in mind, man mark doesn't really work on this game very often, so you're not going to see me do it very much on these videos. Attacking support, stay back while attacking, playing that role as a defensive midfielder. And then with his interceptions, these are on aggressive as well, because as we're sort of alluding to here, we're really trying to just replicate that aggressive defensive ball winning midfielder. So that's what the difference is going to be between the likes of him and then Pogba on the other side. Defensive position is on cover centre. The reason being is that you are going to manually drag him out if and when you need to, if there's space on the wing for the opposition. Otherwise, you want him staying within that central area, because it's very easy to exploit on FIFA, and you'll concede a lot of goals that way. If the central area is vacant, you want those central midfielders to really be protecting the central areas and your defence as much as possible. Moving on to Pogba. So we've got stay back while attacking and also stay on the edge of the box for crosses. But because we've moved him up to central midfield, his positioning is generally going to be a bit higher than it is with the likes of Scott McTominay. So you've got more of a deep lying playmaker. Now, we didn't get him into this game as much in the first half. It was only when I brought him out to left midfield in the second half that you'll really see that difference. But at the moment, with him at central midfield, these are the roles. Now, positioning freedom is on free roam, and again, that's that whole deep line playmaker element. You really want him showing for the ball as much as possible, picking up those little pockets of space within the central areas. It's the best way to get into it, and very much this is a new feature on FIFA, and it's one that I'm really enjoying using at the moment. Finally, with defensive position, the same as McTominay, for the same reason, he's on cover centre. So next up, we've got Bruno Fernandes in cam. Defensive support is come back on defence. We know how hard he works, how he's going to trap back. And then support on crosses, stay on the edge of the box for the cross as well. So occasionally he will get in, and the reason being is that on the tactics, you put it up to the line up to 6. So if a winger isn't in a position to get into the box, maybe he's crossing it in, then Fernandes does occasionally stray into the box, which you will notice in the gameplay. And it really replicated his role very, very well, I have to say. Sort of what he does. Generally, he'll stay on the edge of the box, but occasionally he'll drift in when he needs to, looking to exploit space. With positioning freedom, this is on free roam as well. Again, that movement, really trying to find lots of pockets and areas of space. Very, very good. You can get him into the game a lot. He'll drift out onto either side, depending on where the possession of the ball is. So that's really handy as well. You're just looking to get one of your star players into the game, and he's so important in that element and area, you know, to the build-up and the way Manchester United build up. On to the wingers next. Both of them have the exact same roles. So Sancho and Greenwood in this case, both of them on comeback on defence. Chance creation is cutting side. You're looking for them to angle their runs as much as possible and then running behind. Really penetrate the opposition defence. This is where we've got more of an emphasis on the counter-attack again. Players looking to move, getting behind as often as possible. We saw it happen. Greenwood does actually score the goal, the second goal. Running in behind, coming in a bit more centrally because he's angled his run as Ronaldo lays it off to him. So that's really, really handy. And then support on crosses is obviously on getting to the box of the cross as well, because we have already spoken about that. Finally, we have the big man up front. Very much enjoyed playing with him, I have to say, in this system as well. So support runs stay central. Make sure that he's not really drifting out wide that much, because he's very much the focal point. He's the target. The crosses are all going to him. A lot of crosses went to him in this game, but somehow he couldn't score. I don't know how. Didn't help that he kept shooting and volleying rather than actually heading it. So that was a little bit annoying. Attacking runs, getting behind, again looking to penetrate the defence, utilise his pace. He does still have pace. And also just playing to that counter-attacking element as well. And then finally with defensive support, stay forward. Make sure he's not really tracking back. You want to keep him as fresh as possible, ready to be that outlet going forward, that ball that you can play up to him. Right, so we've finished the instructions for this team. Let me show you how it changes a little bit depending on the personnel. So in this instance, we're going to have Cavani up front instead of Ronaldo in case you've rotated. We're going to actually move Sancho to left midfield here and then put Pogba out on the left, because they do sometimes put Pogba on the left. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put Fred here and have him as the holding midfielder if I can find a way to get him into it, because unfortunately it does mess up a little bit. Right, so we finally got it. You know, absolute nightmare. You do have to jig about with the positions a little bit just to get him into defensive midfield, but don't worry, it can happen. He is now at left defensive midfield. Important to note also, he's on left defensive midfield and he's on right defensive midfield as well, so just get that one there. Right, so we've got Pogba at left midfield here, and how this changes, first off with Fred. We have him on exactly the same as what McTominay is on. So that will be aggressive interceptions, stay back while attacking, cut passing lanes and cover centre. They'll often use this combination more when they're playing against someone like Man City, for example. Now obviously I switched at half time and changed it, so worth bearing that one in mind. And then with Pogba, as you can see here, we've got him on a very different style and role compared to what Sancho's was on. So at left midfield, he's still on comeback on defence, make sure he's tracking back, but this time with chance creation, he's on free roam. He's going to come into those spaces in the central areas a lot more. It's going to create an overload for you in those central areas, which is very, very good. And you complement that by having him come short as well, so that he's playing a part in that sort of short to intermediate passing game. Support on crosses is also stay on the edge of the box for the cross as well. So you're going to find Fernandes getting into the box a whole lot more. What this also does is it makes a lot of room for Shaw to overlap down that left hand side. So worth bearing that one in mind as well. You just create a bit more space for him. Finally, with Cavani, still on getting behind like Ronaldo, but this time in support runs he's on drift wide. What you often find, particularly when they've had Greenwood on the right, is that sometimes they'll switch over a lot. And it's worth bearing in mind that obviously back in his PSG days when Cavani was there and Ibrahimovic was also there, Ibra would often play as the striker, which meant Cavani was out on the right. And he's got a high work rate as well. So, you know, he's really used to that sort of positioning and that sort of role, so he'll often drift out wide, trying to find space, trying to run in behind, causing a bit of a mismatch option for the opposition as well, and a bit of a problem. And then finally with defensive support, this time on basic defence, you're a bit more lenient with him tracking back if and when he needs to occasionally. He does have more stamina, and as we said, obviously a high work rate, so worth bearing that one in mind as well. Right then, that is the end of this video then, guys. If you have any questions about the tactic whatsoever, then please do, well, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments section. Don't forget to check out my Borussia Dortmund career mode series. That is currently ongoing. Really enjoying that. It's a realistic rebuild of Dortmund. So go and check that one out after this, as well as all of my other tactics videos. Currently recreating lots of different tactics. There'll be a lot more to come as well. So check that out as well. Check out all the links in the description. Follow me on Twitter, and also the links to Aniba. Use the code BROMA18 for a 3% discount on your purchases, and also all the affiliate links to all of my gear as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you get notifications every time I upload, and drop a like on the video if you have enjoyed it as well. On that note, we're going to finish it off there. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.